Ahoy, my friends. Welcome aboard the Afro Tales podcast. I'm your storyteller, Aman Mazinga. Join me as we explore the tales that grew from the people of indigenous and African descent in the Americas and the Caribbean. After, come and see me, chef, who will impart upon you a recipe for the story you have just heard. So with no further ado, let us set sail on this new age of exploration. Old Sally Cato. One morning in autumn, old Sally Cato, a widow woman, rose with the chickens in her cabin far back in the Missouri Hill Country. She set out biscuits and gravy and hot coffee, then roused her two sons, Big Tom and Little Jack, out of bed by lifting the bedsteads and spilling the two onto the floor. "Time for you to go and fetch out one of the cattle," she said. "Bring it on back, kill it, skin it, and get the beef ready so I can cure it. I want to be sure we have plenty of meat for the winter." Little Jack, who had a small voice, whined, "Can we wait till next week or so? That's a whole lot of work." "It'll be the same amount of work next week or next month," said his mama. "But winter won't hold back, even if you do. Now go." Then she said, "And be careful you don't do anything to rouse Bally Bully." At the name of the giant who lived beyond the hill, both Little Jack and Big Tom began to shake. They knew what a horrible monster, as big as a mountain or bigger, was an old, greedy gut who'd as soon swallow a man as look at him. "Maybe we should wait a mite before fetching that beef," said Tom. "Get now," said their mother, and they got. Sally dragged her old spinning wheel on to the porch, shaded by bittersweet vines, watching her two sons going off dragfoot toward the pasture where the cattle were kept. She sighed and shook her head. "I swear, if they brains was in birds' heads, all the birds of the air would be flying backwards." Then she set to her spinning. Went the old spinning wheel. Meanwhile, Jack and Tom trudged toward the high pasture. Along the way, they were startled by a sudden fluttering of crows from a nearby meadow. The birds shot up in the sky like a cloud of black smoke. "Well," said Little Jack, "them crows mean bad luck." "Oh," said Big Tom, "you listen to Ma too much. A crow don't mean nothing more than a crow." But then they got to the pasture where the beef cattle should have been grazing. They found it empty. The little herd had wandered even farther back among the hills. "Now what?" grumbled Tom in his booming voice. But Jack dropped to his knees and searched among the grass and fallen leaves until he found a Granddaddy Longlegs. Holding the insect in the palm of his hand, he asked, "Granddaddy Longlegs, where are the cows? Granddaddy Longlegs, where are the cows?" As he watched closely, the insect lifted one slender leg and pointed to the west. "That way," said Jack confidently, letting the spider go back to his leaf pile. "I swear you and Ma are two of a kind," said Tom. But he followed his brother higher into the hills, where the butternuts and hickory and elm grew thickest. The higher they climbed, the more they kept eyes and ears peeled for any sign of Bally Bully. They were dangerously close to the giant's territory, and they knew that anyone the monster caught trespassing would be gobbled up faster than a duck swallows a June bug. At last, they found the missing cattle in a tiny meadow that neither of them had seen before. Straight away, Big Tom selected the fattest animal and knocked it over the head with his hammer. "Why'd you do that?" asked Jack. "So we can do our work here without my watching and saying as how we're doing it all wrong and making us take twice the time to get it done," answered Tom. "Now help me hang this carcass from the tree so we can skin it and dress it." "But Ma said," Jack begun. "You pipe down and start skinning," his brother said. They worked for a little while. Then Jack stopped suddenly and said, "I hear something." "No, you don't," said his brother. "Keep working." Jack worked a bit longer, then said, "I hear something. It's only nearer." "No, you don't." Tom didn't look up from his work. "Keep working." Suddenly, they both stopped because this time, both of them had heard a boom, boom, like thunder over the hill. A minute later, they saw Bally Bully thromping over the hill with no more effort than a widow climbing a stile to cross a fence. To the frightened brothers, the giant looked bigger than the mountain itself. His black hair stood up like a grove of trees. His eyes were as big and round as wagon wheels, and his mouth, filled with yellow teeth besides the tombstones, looked wide enough to swallow half the country. The giant sniffed the air with nostrils as big and black and deep as the pits of hell. The frightened boys hugged each other and shook, too scared to move. "I smell fresh meat. What you doing?" asked the giant. Skinning beef," said Tom, his voice suddenly as small as Jack's. "Give me some." Quick as a wink, Tom cut a big chunk of meat and tossed it to the giant. He gulped it down whole. The giant licked his lips. "Give me some more," he demanded. Tom sliced off an even bigger slab and threw it into the monster's outstretched palm. The giant swallowed it down. "More!" he roared. Soon Jack and Tom were cutting up the beef carcass as fast as they could and flinging it at Bally Bully. But every helping only made the giant hungry. "More!" he thundered. "More! More! More!" There ain't no more," said Jack, whose voice had shrunk to a whisper. "Then I'll eat you," rumbled the giant, stretching out a hand as big as a barn. But before he could grab the brothers, they took off running like 60 for home. Behind them, they heard the boom, boom, boom of the giant following them. On every side, the trees danced up and down with each deafening boom. Fear put wings on the brothers' feet. In next to no time, they had reached the little cabin where their mother sat working her spinning wheel. Ma, they screeched. "Bally Bully's after us." "What did you do to rile him up?" asked old Sally suspiciously. Now she could hear the boom, boom of the onrushing giant. "Nothing," Jack said. "We were just skinning the beef." "You was just skinning back in the hills?" she exclaimed. "Ain't I told you time and again that there's nothing like the smell of fresh meat to bring Bally Bully sniffing around. Boom! He gonna eat us, Ma, wailed Tom. Boom! Boom! And I have half a mind to let him, she said. You two are as sorry as a pair of worn-out shoes. Now the shingles of the cabin roof and the ground shook from the boom, boom, boom of the giant's tread. The woman's hound dog blew how from under the porch. A second later, the animal was off and running. Howdy, Ma! Tom and Jack yelled. They were so frightened, their teeth were rattling as loud as hogs eating charcoal. Sally pointed to the big old kettle in the yard that she used for making soap. Up in that pot and hide yourselves under it. I'll see the old greedy guts myself. Just before Bally Bully lumbered into view, old Sally Cato had returned to her spinning. Under her apron, she had tucked a feather duster, a pair of knitting needles, and a carving knife. Looking up at the gangling, hairy-faced creature glaring down at her, Sally had to keep a tight hold on her courage as well as her feet. She wanted to hightail it across the hedgerows and cornfields as fast as her hound dog had. Why don't fellas go? The giant asked. He sniffed the air. They's around. I smell them. The old woman pretended to pay him no mind. Her spinning wheel went. In a voice so loud that it rattled the roof over her head, Bally Bully demanded, Why are they hiding? Still, the old woman gave all her attention to the spinning. You deaf old woman! The giant got down on his hands and knees and pushed his bristly face close to the woman's. He opened his mouth wide to shout in her ear. At that instant, old Sally ran into his mouth all the way to the back. Then she shook her feather duster about, releasing in great clouds of dust. That made the giant wheeze and sneeze. The old woman hung on to his tonsils for the worst of this. Then she slid down his gullet into his stomach. Then she ran around, jabbing at his insides with her knitting needles, giving Bally Bully the granddaddy of all gut aches. The pain was so fearful that the monster bellowed and stamped and ran around in circles, knocking down one corner of the porch and smashing the wheelbarrow flat. Tom and Jack peeped out from under the soap kettle and saw Bally Bully frantically waving his arms like a windmill gone to the bad and sounding like a dying calf in a hailstorm. The whole countryside shook as if hit by an earthquake. Inside the giant, the older woman found his heart. Then she took her carving knife and finished him off, lickety-split. But even though dead, Bally Bully was too dumb to fall over. For a long time, he just stood glassy-eyed while the brothers under the soap kettle tried to guess what had happened. Suddenly, the giant pitched over backwards like a felled tree. The force of him hitting the ground raised the cabin and barn and outhouse 10 feet in the air before they dropped back into place. Matter-of-factly, the old woman cut herself free from the giant. Then she called her sons and showed them the beef lying unharmed inside the giant, who had swallowed each chunk whole. None of it was a bit harmed. Now then, said the woman, carry that beef out to the smokehouse. It'll be dust soon. And next time when I tell you to do something or not to do something, you listen good. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Big Tom and Little Jack answered. Good, said old Sally. Now, you get to your business and let me get to mine. I swear, these days ain't nothing but one interruption after the other, she said. In no time, though, she was happily humming herself while her spinning wheel went. The end. Wow, so this was another great story coming from the book Cut from the Same Cloth, American Women of Myth, Legend, and Tall Tale by Robert D. Sansucci and Brian Pinckney. They mention in the forward to the story, they like to do forwards in these for each story, that this particular story coming out of Missouri had many elements of African stories, which involve flesh-eating elephants and swallowing people whole until cutting themselves out, kind of like Anansi does, and in the Guyana tale, crawling into the elephant's belly, which I think I did on here before. If I did, I'll mark it in the show notes. I like stories like this, especially stories where a seemingly weak woman is the strong one in the story. She's the one. She's the savior of everything, and it reminds me of how you hear stories of women being able to pick cars off of children, or just women just coming to the defense of their families and friends and their loved ones, as they always do. I know in this particular time of year, especially around Black History Month, that we see the images of Black women fighting against police. I'm pretty sure many people have seen the Black woman holding the machete to the police officer's neck while standing over her either son or loved one, whoever they may be. That's just a common theme in, I think, a lot of women, especially women of what quote unquote the minorities ethnicities. They tend to, Black, Hispanic, just a lot of women in general tend to be able to grab that strength that misogynistic men seem to believe they don't have, and then come to the rescue of many of those that they love, and I appreciate that. But the story also highlights how kids will get on your nerves. They just won't listen sometimes, and because they don't listen, trouble follows them. And being a parent, you have to help them take care of that trouble, whether you're teaching them how to do it themselves, or if you have to take care of it yourself and then show them the error of their ways later on. That is just something that being a parent is all about. I always laugh and say, and I've heard it other places, and I'm pretty sure you have, that toddlers are always trying to kill themselves in the first couple years of a child's life. You're just trying to keep them alive, So that's one of those type of things that children do, and it doesn't really matter the age. I mean, even as a teenager, I was getting myself situations that my mom was like, look, look, I'm gonna need you not to be doing that. All right. But yeah, so it's just a wonderful short story. I love it. It really reminds me of home, reminds me of my mom and my grandma and stuff like that. Cause they were kind of those matter of fact type women. So I appreciate that in this story, and I hope you liked it, and I hope you go see Chef and he gives you a wonderful recipe inspired by this story, all right? Until next time, thank you for coming on this journey with me. Thank you for telling a friend. And until next time, as always, have a blessed day.
Welcome, my friends, to the galley. I am your chef, and today we have a wonderful recipe inspired by the story you've just had. Today, we will be creating sweet potato butter and hoe cakes. Now, what will you need for this tasty and delicious recipe? First, for the sweet potato butter, you will need 2 pounds of sweet potatoes, cooked and mashed. 3/4 cups of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of water or apple cider, 2 tablespoons of butter, optional, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, a pinch of salt, and half a teaspoon of vanilla. For the whole cakes, you will need 1 cup of cornmeal, 3/4 cups of boiling water, half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking grease, lard, or oil for frying. Now, how do we put this together? Easy. For the sweet potato butter, combine all ingredients in a heavy pot. Cook over low heat for 40 to 60 minutes. Stir frequently. Cook until thick, dark, glossy, and spreadable. It should mount on a spoon. Now, for the hoe cakes, mix the cornmeal and salt in a bowl. Pour in boiling water. Stir to make a thick dough. Let cool just enough to handle. Shape into flat patties about 1/4 to half an inch thick. Fry in hot grease over medium heat about 3 to 4 minutes per side. Cook until crisp outside and tender inside. And now you can put the two together. And that is it, my friends. Now, go. Make this recipe yours. And until I have another wonderful recipe for you, remember old Sally Cato. She plays no games. And until next time, my friends, as always, enjoy!
Thank you, my friends, for coming on this voyage. Thanks to Art by Chalet for the logo, episode, and shirt designs. You can get t-shirts and other items on tpublic.com. You can contact me on all socials at AfroTalesCast. That's AfroTalesCast. And email me at AfroTalesCast@gmail.com. You may also become a benefactor by simply sharing with any and everyone, giving a thumbs up, a 5-star rating and review in your podcast app of choice, or simply donating on Patreon or Ko-fi.com. That's KO-FI.com. So until we meet again, may your winds be fair and your seas follow.